All right, we are live. Infinite Plane Saturnday, March 29th, 2025. I sent out a newsletter, so a number of you should be expecting it. And we were briefly live on Mixler, where I'll be doing Monday to Friday morning deprogramming. But the reason I was on tonight was just to test the chat function, and it does have a functioning chat, so it's all working. So let's go ahead and open phones. Yesterday I had a phone call from Lynn, and mid-call, after we heard what she had to say, before I could respond, it had dropped YouTube. So I don't know if we're being targeted, if it's Gremlins, Deep State, EMP, something like that. Or I've read, too, it's on YouTube side, which is what I think. But I did go through my settings. So phones are open, 505-510-4226. I started the topic last night about how Alex Jones has been replaced. My theory is that he has been replaced by an AI avatar, that he's a virtual Jones, AI Jones. I did a poll, and very few people suspected clone, but many people believe that he was actually physically replaced. More people think he was physically replaced than he is now AI. And Jake the Orifice has put out a pretty good video breakdown of this. And his contention is that we're looking at a mask. And what he did, and I didn't do my due diligence here. I didn't look at Jones as possibly somebody else, that Alex Jones got replaced. But what he found is a mask flaw. So this isn't some AI glitch. This is Alex Jones hanging out in the sun in front of his Cybertruck. And when he removes his sunglasses, his eyes kind of like don't line up with what appears to be a mask. And this is not far-fetched, not at all. The question is, when did they replace him, if this is true? Now, I still think it's likely that he is on some kind of, tea replacement, and he's exercising and eating better. But there is the possibility, and he is in that career field where they routinely involve media fakery and spycraft and intelligence operations, psyops, and all that. So it's, in my view, I tend to agree that Jones has been replaced. But the question is he AI, or are we looking at a mask and somebody's playing the role? Now, something else to consider too is that the AI would have decades of content, audio and video, to feed into it, and it could generate organic scripts that sound real. It might even be more logically consistent than Jones, because I've been working with a number of these creative writing AI applications. These, like, Novel Crafter is a good one. And the thing is, if you have something like ChatGPT review a manuscript, it'll tell you that's a continuity error. This is a logical flaw. This will confuse people. And I think that normal people have flaws in their logic, that we have misremembrances. So it could be an improvement. So it might be too good. And I think right now it does look like AI, as much as it looks like possibly even a filter. You know, a lot of these celebrities, and I consider him a celeb, they do make use of the best as far as filters and makeup in order to be the most telegenic. And he is an on-camera personality. And we have to give him credit, whoever's behind the mask, as really being the GOAT of MSM+. You know, I disagree fundamentally with where they're coming from, but nobody wears it better. I mean, William Cooper it probably deserves that claim more, but that's from a different era. But who's going to be the next Jones if they're phasing him out? Who's going to fill in this gap? Maybe that one guy, Ian, what's his name? The guy with the mustache, started this rumor that JFK is going to be exposed as some kind of a perv, which I think everybody already knew, and I think nobody cares. Like, the guy eats bear carcasses off the side of the road. He decapitates sharks. Like, so he sent some dirty text messages to an underling. Like, I'm not really shocked. And there's rumors that I've heard that, you know, none of this stuff really, and I'm also curious, why hasn't he been more outspoken about the JFK files? Everybody forgot about the JFK files. Matt X said, I asked a colleague at work who isn't into conspiracies but know who AJ is, and even said that's not the same guy. Penguinati says, looks like inner nose looks masky. Keto Diet Jones says, copacetic. You know, I'd like some of these fitness influencers on YouTube to look at Alex Jones. If nothing else, just give him credit. Give the guy credit. He went from, look at his avatar. His avatar, he's somewhat rotund. And you look at him now, and he's like a G.I. Joe version of himself. This is an idealized version of Jones. Although, what is he really saying? It's like, who's writing his scripts? Because the last video I saw, he seemed to be selling Cybertrucks. He's a Cybertruck salesman. And those things are falling apart now. So he's selling these horrible sci-fi, lemons, sci-fi inspired lemons. Have you heard of the frunk? These things got frunks. And apparently the frunks are also guillotines. So a frunk is a front trunk. And apparently when it closes, if your hand is in the side, it'll lop your limbs right off. Okay, let's see. So Alex Jones has been replaced. We did a poll. I'm still thinking it's more likely drugs. I think drugs is the most likely explanation. Occam's razor. But the fact that a normie or a colleague at work who has no idea noticed the change means, yeah, there's a significant change. So you're not wrong for calling it out. Just like we're not wrong for calling space fakery fake looking. Even Elon Musk has agreed with us. It looks like CGI. By the way, Russell Brand put out a video today saying, yes, I did go to a Diddy party like everyone in Hollywood. See, he recently converted to Christianity and he really wears it on his sleeve. And, everything he does is he's like reading from, he's always citing the Bible, promoting his conversion. But here he is saying, yeah, I went and did a bad thing, but everybody else did it too. Like it went from being totally responsible for the state of his soul and taking full accountability for his errors so he could make a life change to everyone else was doing it. So that's why I don't think that these right-wing influencers converting to Catholicism are legitimate. I think it's all performative Christianity. I see Candace Owens with a cross on the wall behind her. Just seems so phony. Luigi Mangione, disturbing Goodreads reveals obsession with Unabomber Ted Kaczynski. I kind of missed this detail. I glossed over it. But I've been doing some research into Luigi and adding to the Wikipedia article I'm developing here, or the AutoHoax wiki. And yeah, it turns out that he had a significant number of things to say that kind of aligned him with this class warfare thing, even going so far as to identify with Kaczynski, which is intriguing because Maxwell, was it Maxwell Azarello on 4/19/2024, the guy who ignited himself outside the Trump courthouse? He wrote a manifesto, and it was pretty much a plagiarized version of the Kaczynski thing. He might have referenced it as well. McDirtywork says, everyone forgot about Fort Knox. Let's make a list of what they forgot about. The children. Save the children. You guys forgot about the children in the crates, the Wayfair cabinets with their adrenochrome being sucked by Democrats. The satanic sacrifices. So you forgot about the children. You forgot about the Epstein files. You forgot about the JFK files. You forgot about Fort Knox. It's just the next. They have shiny object syndrome. It was a cross, or what's the difference between a cross and a crucifix? I think it was a Catholic thing, so it's crucifix, right? I don't know. According to the Mandela affected, who are all very reputable sources, he was hanged in a tree. Which strikes me as kind of contradictory, because if reality did shift and then he was hanged on a tree, why aren't Christians or Catholics wearing trees? Why aren't there trees on top of churches instead of crosses? This reminds me. One of Bill Hicks's famous jokes was more of a rant. He was ranting about the JFK assassination. And he made some kind of joke about how morbid it was to have a cross, and he compared it to if like JFK coming back, and people are wearing a gun. I don't know. He had some kind of connection he made, and I find these things to be intriguing because it seems like there's this ongoing theme we've kind of unpacked recently. In fact, a caller last night brought this up, how Marilyn Manson put out a song on 11/22, an album. The album's theme has some JFK assassination elements. And of course, this follows right after the Trump assassination attempt. So you can kind of add this into the collection of predictive programming for Trump, concurrent programming, and the direct allusions to the JFK assassination, which is also the date, by the way, that Leave the World Behind came out. Well, we were talking about this because Manson was in a video where he portrayed JFK getting shot. And that's the song he closes his sets with, from what I've researched, Coma White. And that song has its own interesting history because when it was released, MTV had to withdraw the video because JFK Jr. died. And the song is indirectly about JFK Jr., which is the Q obsession. Because in the song's narrative, it's based on a script for an unproduced movie called Hollywood. In it, it's about JFK as the second coming, JFK Jr. as the third coming. And the death of this savior has everyone into a state of despair. It's an intriguing video and concept, and I'm like, where do these people get their ideas? And then, of course, his name, Marilyn, has some JFK connotations as well. Marilyn Monroe, whose death date is also significant in this story. 777, thanks for joining. Cut by the book. The crucifix came from a vision of a Roman leader. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, the cross in the Greek, Strong's can mean an X. Yeah, so the X and the cross symbol. So I've connected Elon Musk to Constantine as part of his composite. He's a Frankenstein amalgamation. Iron Man, Constantine, Werner von Braun, Willy Wonka. And one of his elements here is Constantine, both the rocket pioneer in Russia and the Pope. And so when he put the X on the Twitter headquarters, a glowing cross, I said, this is Musk as Constantine with his vision of the shining cross, the sign under which he would unite the empire. And that's when he called it the Everything app. So anyway, I'm looking at this building narrative of Musk as Constantine and his role in this worldview formation through the internet, Disease X. And recently, somebody gave Donald Trump the cross that Constantine had a... Let me see if I actually can pull this up on a search. I'm looking for my phone so I can pull this up because it was a... I probably have it noted. I try to keep receipts on everything. There was a gilded cross that was given to Donald Trump recently, and they had made some allusion to Constantine. And given Musk's proximity to Trump, it all kind of links together. Again, bombs found at Tesla dealerships. And also, I want to remind you that there was a movie out not too long ago called Canary Black, which has a Putin-like character releasing a, quote, digital nuke. Okay, here it is. Breaking. Greek audience cheers as Archbishop hands Trump a holy cross and says he's the new Constantine. Yeah, so they called him a new Constantine. So the Constantine reference, again, I've been discussing this, and I look at the iconography as though I were an alien anthropologist with no preconceived notions about what I'm seeing, and I don't think that there's any real difference between Noah's flood and climate change. And you look at the nomenclature, the symbolism, NOAA and NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, the symbol of the dove, the bird over the ocean. It's all there. They even have, I think they call it the ark. What is it called? There's some kind of ark they have. There's this, some kind of terminology that they're just appropriating from the Old Testament. This is like a reoccurring theme that we've been noting. So when I see the cross or the X replacing the bird, it looks to me like the dove and the cross from Christianity. And we're seeing a lot of this. It's like a template. And these things are templated. And Musk is of particular interest and has been for some time. Next to Trump, he is one of the most scripted characters. In fact, quite literally, if you look at Werner von Braun's book, in which the Elon is the colonizer of Mars, who sets up a structure on Mars, a governing structure based on that of Rome, which would make him what? Pope Elon. Lord Laney says, another plane crash I saw looked like staged wreckage from a Hollywood movie. Looked like what Tim had mentioned, a military concealment fog generator. Yeah. In fact, that's one of the things I believe was used on 9/11, that people think it's some just debris and dust. It's like, well, no, there's this sort of a concealment fog is what you would call it, they use in the military. And it just creates an impenetrable visual shield so that you can't see what's happening. And so you can move equipment and personnel. You could set up a psyop. I mean, also consider that there were drills happening on 9/11. And the drill thing is something I want to bring up too. Just moving into the future, when we analyze these events, there are a number of hallmarks that we're always trying to identify to ascertain whether it's real or a hoax. And I think it's pretty safe to say that if it is concurrent with a drill, and it's concurrent with some Netflix programming, and it also has alongside it some kind of, I guess, bifurcated, perfectly split down the middle political interpretation and utility, it's pretty much fake. All right, thank you, Copaesthetic, Rocco Calzone, Scott Rankin, Conscious Reality, Nicotramus, Gem 7 Angel, West Skeptical, Portal Complex, Neurojack, Meowry, Matt X. Oh, there we go, another 5. So we have about 15 new members, courtesy of Matt X and Copaesthetic. Austin 108, Day Raven 0, Daniel Morris, Mimsy Schwimsy, Frugal Snowboard. Hey, you can all go look now. Frugal Snowbird says, remember Marilyn Manson said we're all in the dope show. Yeah, he's said a number of enigmatic things, and his work has been correlated with a number of psyops going back to Littleton, which is why he's relevant. They're relevant if their work is used in a programming capacity, if they're propaganda vectors, whether they know it or not. I mean, they don't have to be let in entirely. I think that's asking a little much of people to keep a secret so big. I mean, one really flimsy argument against the moon landing hoax, they'll say, well, there were 400,000 people involved. No way they could have kept a secret like that. And it's like, well, not every person has to be in the know. You know, it's compartmentalized. And if you've been in the military and you're familiar with security clearances, this all makes sense. You drastically reduce the number of people in the know about crucial information. So we have an information, it's a pyramid. And the people at the capstone have the most information. Although those of us who've left the pyramid or who aren't in its shadow, who've stepped outside of their box, yeah, we have a bit more insight. Copaesthetic says, why is YouTube shorting us subscribers? Gifting memberships to Gold Wrenchers have been here since day one. Interesting. Yeah, YouTube's a bad actor in this, but we have to have some kind of interface to interact with people, and they happen to have something of a monopoly. I like YouTube for everything else they do, especially the educational content, the music and everything, but and they have been sort of nice to us ever since that lawsuit was filed, which we'll have some updates this spring. It's kind of a side topic, but this dispute between Hunter Biden and his laptop hacker, it kind of came to a weird ending recently. That's it. Patrick says, Hicks said, a lot of Christians wear crosses around their necks. Nice sentiment, but do you think that when he comes back, he's really going to want to look at a cross? Yeah, there was that, and then there was the part where he gets into this weird, grotesque rant about Jackie Kennedy and the way that she was climbing over the back of the car. And I happen to think the most likely explanation, and I don't know where I heard this first from, is somebody on Fakeologist. He had said he thinks that it was likely a dummy. Like there's a dummy JFK in that scene, and that when you see Jackie reaching up and it looks like she's blasting him, it looks like she's shooting him, she's pulling a wire, and then his head is exploding because it's a squib. And that when she crawls on the back of the vehicle, she was grabbing the squib canister that was rolling off the back of the car. So this all presupposes that this was not an assassination, but that it was a movie, that it was likely done over several shots. And you have to also keep in mind that they did not broadcast it live. Nobody saw it. It took 12 years for the Zapruder film to leak or to be released on Geraldo Rivera's TV show. Greetings, Machine Lies. Thanks for joining. Oh, Breek says, Hollywood film sets run on a need-to-know basis and people still don't get compartmentalization. I've used that analogy. I'm like, do you think that the stagehands or that craft services know what's going to be said at the end of the movie, that they're going to be given any kind of insights about? And no, I mean, it's a closed set. I like using that terminology too. These psyops are closed movie sets. And so they have ways of turning parts of the city, or any city or a place or location, into a closed set. And I think drills often serve this purpose. I mean, if you think about it, on 9/11, if they had that many drills going on, like look at, I think it's Operation Tripod and others, you have hundreds or 1,000+ people involved in terrorism drills on that day. That means that wherever they're doing drills, they have a closed movie set. You're not just going to walk onto a place where the police and the EMTs are simulating mass casualties. I mean, these are closed movie sets. It's a training situation. But people who can't figure out compartmentalization are naive. And today, more than ever, skepticism is warranted because you cannot really discern real from fake if you see it on the screen. I mean, we're having a legitimate conversation as to whether Alex Jones is Alex Jones, or he's some guy in a mask, or he's AI generated. And these are all equally plausible. They really are. So if you don't have that expanded frame of reference, then no, you're going to have no concept of big conspiracies. And even conspiracy theorists are short-sighted. So the normies say there are no conspiracies. The conspiracy theorists see conspiracies here and there. The truth of the whole situation is that it's all conspiracy. One of the biggest conspiracies is the idea that we have separate governments, that there's not one unilateral control over everything. Big G. And it rules the world, like it or not. And you were born into its metascript. We're living in its prefabricated history. Is that cliche, history, his story? But really, you could say that it's Big Brother's story. And how far in advance did they write it? Well, I don't know, but we're looking at instances every day of predictive programming for stuff happening on the world stage right now in 2020 to 2025 that were predicted back in the 80s, or even back in 1958, tracked down. In 1958, the Trump character gets arrested. We're talking decades of preparation for the big stories of this era. They are writing the Zeitgeist and performing it in front of us. Matt X says, it's annoying when YouTube does that, but it does bring out the lurkers. True. True. If you're in the chat, somebody might put a shiny blue titanium wrench in your hand, in your flaps, and it will light up your face, and we'll see who's there, which is fine. And by the way, this is an open platform. It's not an echo chamber. So did we run out of time? Now, look, I looked into this thing. So 1,028 days left had to do with some kind of climate model prediction about the end of the world if we didn't change our ways. So this prophecy was proclaimed in June of 2022. 2 days ago, we crossed that point. We crossed 1,028 days. But somebody pointed out to me that the protester has one hand raised, which he says is a clue that we have to add 5 days. So if you're disappointed that the world did not end yesterday, there's a chance it might still end on April Fool's Day. Yeah, open phones for open minds, but also open phones for closed minds. I talk to closed minds all the time, and it's not a judgment call. It's just an accurate description of a blinkered perspective. And that's fine. This is a world of subjectivity. Believe whatever you want. It's encouraged. The more subjective it is, the more it's treated as morally superior. Because facts are hate and objectivity is exclusive and especially hateful. It's actually a thought crime. That's what they're trying to excise from the conversation altogether an objective viewpoint of what's happening, which doesn't exist if everything is filtered through the mediation, which is why I say objectivism fell flat on its face. From the very beginning, they treated the newspapers as objective if biased, but reporting on real events. And that's how they get you. Everybody agrees the media lies. Everybody knows it's biased. But nobody goes so far as to say it's an entire fabrication. And that's because they haven't really thought it out, like thought it through. Why would they do this? And that's what we're answering here.
That's how they get you.
Hey, what's up, caller?
Everybody agrees the media lies.
Hi, it's Coital Smoking Mirror.
Oh, hey, what's up? I see your tweets frequently. You should post a link to your Twitter account.
Pardon me?
I follow your Twitter account. You should post a link.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I appreciate you. I appreciate you promoting it too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's where I normally see your content. And what do you?
Can you hear me still?
Yes. Wait, hold on. Yesterday, Lynn was calling, and we had some kind of problem where she didn't hear. So hang on just a second if you're listening, because there's a possibility that when I last reset my computer, it changed my settings. So give me just a moment here. Having to fix this on the fly.
Yeah, I've got you muted here as well.
Okay, so just give me a second. So we're listening to Coyote Smoke and Mirror, and I'm almost certain now that Google has glitched out the settings and they have shut off my audio. So I'm gonna have to fix it here on the fly. So if you want to call, why don't you call right back and we'll get this done.
Okay, I'll call right back. I'm gonna see if I can find you.
Okay, so let me go ahead and address this. Should have thought about this. I need to have a checklist of things. Okay, it looks like we are just about there. Okay, so occasionally we have these issues, but now this one is fixed. So appreciate your patience there. Infinite Plane Radio. Anything? Let's see here. Hey, can you hear me? Are we getting anything yet?
Yeah, now I can hear you. It's actually a little bit better here on YouTube. I was just on X a minute ago.
Okay, not sure what the deal was, but it was a reset thing. It just happens when I reset my computer, I suppose. Now I know. So thanks for calling back.
No, my pleasure. I just want to quick tell you my analysis of what's it, Signal Gate.
Yes, go for it. Signal Gate, please.
And the first thing that's obviously it's just bizarre that he puts on a guy who is from the Atlantic, which is of course a known CIA front magazine, just like Time or Time Life magazine was.
Well,
right?
the Atlantic is Alex Soros, his magazine, son of George Soros. He's married to Uma Abedin, Wienergate connection, and the whole laptop thing there. And the Atlantic had 3 significant instances of Donald Trump headshot predictive programming in the last year. And then Time did as well, and you mentioned Time.
Oh, really? Atlantic did as well. I remember the Time.
Oh, yeah. Atlantic had a big one. It actually had one where the Supreme Court justices are above his head, and the top of his ear has a blood on it. Like it actually had red on it. So the curtain's on his ear where it looks like it's got clipped. So, yes, the Atlantic had him a few times.
Oh, that is amazing.
But anyway, go on about this Signal Gate. And for people who don't know, if you want to just go ahead and kind of give them a synopsis.
Well, essentially, what's happened is that they're using this Signal app, which is like a WhatsApp or whatever, and you can add people onto your conversation, right? Which is, and you can have a group chat. So, of course, they're talking about something that's happening allegedly in real time. They're allegedly bombing, I can't remember who, right? And they're chit-chatting. So the thing is, you've got a clearly an intelligence-linked magazine. Then you have them accidentally adding this reporter, and then you have them convened within 24 hours, getting grilled And now tell me, when was the last time you've ever seen a mishap where you can convene Congress in 24 hours but they needed to catch the news cycle. So that's how we can interpret it as a operation, because it's almost, there's some underlying reason why they wanted to reveal this. And one friend of mine, Robert Phoenix, who's an astrologer and a radio personality, political commentator, his thoughts were that it made J.D. Vance look very presidential. If you read the whole thing, J.D. Vance is saying, "Hey guys, maybe we should be doing this kind of thing. Maybe we should be a bit more. We should think about the economy in the region. Maybe what we're doing right now is a bit too." So J.D. Vance was sort of the voice of reason on the chat. So his interpretation was that could be one of the reasons, was to place J.D. Vance in a position of to look presidential.
Interesting, because I noticed they're kind of moderating him, because he had said something about Musk being making everybody look bad, and it's just some kind of, like, some people had framed it as J.D. Vance is jealous of Elon Musk and the attention he's getting, but in reality, it made him sound like a moderate who was actually alarmed at an unelected person having this much influence and how it makes everybody look bad. So that could very well be a psyop, a PR stunt, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, the timing of the whole thing was just things do not happen in real time like that, where somebody gets caught making a boo-boo and they put somebody on the chain. And it turns out theoretically, the guy was, if he keeps on claiming that it's classified information and then he revealed classified information to the quote-unquote enemy, is that reporter then not under the Espionage Act? Shouldn't he be arrested? But of course, he's not going to be.
Yeah, that's interesting there to bring up. And the Atlantic is totally part of the PSYOP spectacle. Like I said, they put out a very specific image of Trump where it showed the ear thing. And then they had another one where it looked like it was his temple. And then they had another one with $47 and a bullet hole. And even Laura Loomer, who's pretty close to Trump, had said on Twitter that they were threatening Trump. So she had pointed out what we're always pointing out, as just being glaringly obvious that this Soros character, Alex Soros, she took it as threatening. Obviously a wrong interpretation of my view, but it shows you that we've been looking at Atlantic, and yeah, they're one of these PSYOP-friendly magazines. They serve as propaganda vectors whenever it comes to a PSYOP. They participate in some capacity. Same with Time. Remember, Time had Trump in the golf course right after he was shot at the golf course, and it's like Trump's in trouble and he's in the sand pit.
Right. I mean, I'm sure most of your listeners are aware that Time Magazine and Henry Luce is a not just on the pad. He's working for the CIA, creating manufacturing culture. It's the first culture creation magazine of my era. I'm born in the early '60s, and of course, that's where Time and Time Life magazine structure are essentially the original, American reality creators.
Fascinating. Yeah, all the iconic images, like the blue marble, Neil Armstrong on the moon, the iconic images were really just put out there with these, like National Geographic. In fact, they just had their 33rd anniversary. But major worldview establishing publications.
Yeah, I actually own the full assassination magazine where they go through the entire Warren Report. It's one entire issue just dedicated to the Warren Report, and the entire scenarios laid out there, and in living color.
I think the JFK assassination is like a contemporary myth. Like, it is something like a crucifixion for the bigger story. And I look back at it, I'm like, well, before it happened, you had suddenly The Manchurian Candidate and some other movie that were all said to have been recently watched by Oswald. And even at that time, there was speculation that the movies that eerily predicted the assassination drove him to do it. And on that day, the commentators were talking about previous assassinations because of lax security. So it's just interesting that this phenomenon of predictive and concurrent programming goes back to even the JFK assassination, which means they've always had an echo chamber over the entertainment in order to fuse it with their incoming psyops. And it goes back to the very inception.
Did you see how of course, a lot of your listeners will be familiar with the movie The Manchurian Candidate, which was then later remade with Denzel Washington. But there's another movie I discovered recently. I cannot remember the name of it, but you could find it would be easy enough to find. But it's Frank Sinatra again, who's in The Manchurian Candidate. Frank Sinatra is an assassin and shoots the president from a hotel window as he's getting off the train.
That one's called Suddenly. That's the other Frank Sinatra one.
Wow, so you're aware of that one?
Yeah, and here's another one that just came out. So people are talking about the JFK files, but no one's talking about the fact that 2 months to the day before he was assassinated, September 22nd, 1963, he and Jackie made a home movie while on vacation where he gets killed. And they use Heinz 57 ketchup as blood, and the Secret Service took part in this. And one of these Secret Service agents was over there at the security detail during the real assassination. So if you look it up, I think Variety covered it. JFK filmed his own assassination 2 months before it happened, and apparently Jackie was way into spy thrillers and filmmaking.
Yeah, well, Miles Mathis has a theory that that JFK was very ill, and that he was really spending most of his time with his boyfriend, who was living in the White House with him and Jackie, and that he's probably in on his own faked death, because don't forget the Zapruder film came out years and years after the fact, and that he probably, to do this whole king kill ritual, he participated in it and then retired to Martha's Vineyard with his boyfriend and died probably a couple of years later because he was in very poor physical health.
That's entirely plausible to me. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But the assassination story is the least plausible. And recently I've been looking into the Kubrick connections to the JFK story, because he's consistently associated with them. Like, Eyes Wide Shut comes out when JFK Jr. dies. Dr. Strangelove, when the assassination happened. And so I've been looking into this, and it seems like Full Metal Jacket is loaded with clues about Kubrick's role in staging the JFK assassination. Like, a number of clues are thrown in there. And it's even suggested that Joker is based on JFK from his time as a war photographer.
I think you should do just a whole show on the Kubrick thing. I think on the Kubrick the Vietnam movie you just mentioned.
Yeah, Full Metal Jacket, absolutely. You know what? I will. That's a good idea.
With do the whole show with, because I would love to see that show with your graphics, and you can actually get away with the copyright because you can just do stills, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I absolutely could. I could select a bunch of stills now that I think about it. And another reason I want to do it is that Matthew Modine, who played Joker, he recently was in Stranger Things, and in the season finale, season 4, episode 8, he gets shot, and there's a number of references to the JFK in that show that I have to surface here. But the same actor from Full Metal Jacket. So I have to go back and look at it, because one of the things we've also learned here is that the same actors tend to be doing analogous roles in multiple movies.
Can you give one example of that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So Giancarlo Esposito plays the CEO and antagonist to the Homelander in The Boys. And the Homelander represents Trump. Even the media has acknowledged this. And they had to change the title of the season finale because it came out just as Trump was shot, and it was all about an assassination. And so it had these overlaps. Well, his antagonist is the same actor, Giancarlo, who plays the mayor in Megalopolis, who's the opposition to Caesar, the Trump character, who also survives an assassination attempt. And then he also shows up in the more recent Captain America as Sidewinder, opposing Harrison Ford's character, the president, another Trump proxy. And that movie even features an assassination attempt, which the trailer came out the day before Trump was shot. But the same actor in 3 roles, where it's the same antagonist to the Trump character. And that's just scratching the surface.
I'll tell you what. A buddy of mine and his wife are close friends with Loomer, or Laura Loomer.
Okay.
They said
She's gonna die.
And they
I'm
would
sorry.
actually have
I'm sorry. She's gonna die according to The Madness. In the movie The Madness, Laura Jennings is based on Laura Loomer, and she gets killed with a
no.
nerve agent, and they make it look like a heart attack. And this is the show The Madness, where Musk's character gets killed, where Nick Fuentes' relevant character gets it. But Laura Loomer is in The Madness. I even tweeted this at her, not that she acknowledged it, but her persona has been put in a movie, and she gets killed. So.
Well, send me the tweet. I just put my, it's Coyote 2021. Send me that tweet again in my DMs, and I'll show it to her at lunch. All right?
Yeah, I'll do that. And let me point out one thing, because I am talking about typecasting, but it's beyond typecasting, because it's typecasting in predictive programming roles across not just multiple movies, but also that the timing of the releases are relevant to the psyops. So this actor is in 3 movies that feature the Trump character being nearly assassinated, and all these movies come out concurrent with the assassination attempt. So it's one level beyond.
Wow.
I call it something. I mean, it is typecasting in a sense. Yes.
And that actor is again?
That would be Giancarlo Esposito. He plays the mayor in Megalopolis versus the Caesar Trump character. Right. He's Sidewinder in Captain America versus the Harrison Ford character, who's the president who gets shot at. And then in The Boys, he's Edgar, the CEO antagonist to the Trump character. And there's the similar dynamic exists in a number of other movies I can point out with different actors playing analogous roles. But my point here is that these are specific dynamics that relate to future fake events like assassination attempts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bizarre because I listened to your show and saw it when you did the analysis of the Harrison Ford movie. I mean, it was just stunning.
Yeah, and that one gets deep because I'm like, wait, the president guy becomes the Red Hulk, which makes me think MAGA. MAGA in its final form when it's fully activated. And so then I'm like, wait a minute here. Because in the more recent Mickey 17, which I have to go watch, there's a character in there who's based on Trump. And it's played by Mark Ruffalo, who's known as the Green Hulk. And he's an anti-Trump guy.
Right.
So you have this green versus red Hulk dynamic thing, which is interesting because the anti-establishment, the class warrior has been associated with the color green, like Luigi. So I thought there's that, which is also, again, the Hulk thing. And then Hulk Hogan was right there speaking about Trump's assassination attempt. So we have these connections between assassination attempts, Trump, and actors associating with the Hulk role. So this is just multiple layers of analogous symbolism following a distinct pattern.
And remember at the RNC, Hulk Hogan rips his shirt off just like the Hulk does in the movies.
Oh, that's even better. I know that hadn't even crossed my mind. He did do that, and yeah, the whole thing is just intriguing because he's like telling Trump, "I saw you up on the screen bleeding, and it reminded me of you in the stands when I was bleeding during Hulkamania." So he kind of recounts that, and he's like, "I just thought of this just now," and I was like, "Okay, that's bull." He had this scripted, but it's just from one WWE Hall of Famer to the other because they both did the same trick, which is because Hulk did fake blood. So it's like he didn't make that distinction. My blood is fake, his was real, but it was almost like, I don't know. To me, it just insider talk, if you ask me.
So I will get back to you guys after the Laura Loomer lunch, okay? And I'm going to tell her what her response to your tweet you're going to send me.
Okay, yeah, because look, the madness has been one of the most prescient examples of predictive programming since Leave the World Behind. And it has the most glaring examples of using movie characters to represent real-world proxies. And even the whole scenario of Luigi shooting the CEO and the leftists being, in support of that, it's built into that narrative. So I will send it to you. I'll send it to you. I'll send you my breakdown of the madness because it's 100% relevant to everything that's happening now, and Laura Loomer is definitely in it. So yeah, thank you for calling, and I will send you a forward of that tweet.
My pleasure. A great show. Keep up the great work, and you're much appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, and I will get the caller's Twitter account, and I will share it, and I'll share it in a follow-up newsletter where I have a link to what I'm talking about. So I've been talking about the madness for some time, and the madness represents right-wing extremism spread through the internet like a mind virus. In it, the billionaire who stole the election by financing the fascist takeover also paid for a bunch of online Nazis to turn violent. So this has been associated with Musk, and he's the villain in the movie who gets taken out. And right now, there's a lot of death threats against Musk. This comes out after the madness, mind you. This is Life Follows Netflix as usual. But what's more, the main character, the hero, is like a fictionalized version of Don Lemon. And the idea is, because remember, Don Lemon is very pro BLM. And this character, same thing. And so I'm not going to give you any spoilers if you want to watch The Madness, but basically the story is he's seen as a hero when this Nick Fuentes and Elgas character gets killed. He's protected because he's engaged in class warfare for killing. Even the CEO killing is seen as a heroic act. But the tech billionaire who finances these Nazis is the guy who's the villain of the movie, who's said to have stolen the election. And now it gets even more interesting because he's financing the leader of a group called the Forge, or Brother 14. 14 is a Nazi reference. So Elon Musk retweets Donald Trump when Donald Trump had quoted Napoleon Bonaparte about he who's saving his country commits no crime. So Musk retweets that, and that phrase has been associated with some other fascist, and so people noted this, but they also noted that Musk added 14 US flag emojis to that post. So that's just another example of, and besides that, there were other people who had made connections between Musk liking tweets associated with right-wing extremists, like very specific individuals. So what I'm saying is that life follows Netflix by design, and we're watching the madness unfold. And when the CEO shooting happened with Luigi, I had noted that this class warfare narrative had just been propagated. And I said, this is going to be the lens. And what happened with Luigi? It turned into no war but class war. I even have a flyer here that I got locally. They're stickers. This class warfare narrative emerged out of a Netflix movie, which also ties into the theme in Joker. But it gets down to details. The fact that it was the leftists, they called them Antifa with Uzis. And they were using ghost guns. Luigi used a ghost gun. But I did a deeper breakdown. And again, my point here with Loomer is that one of the characters who had investigated this Musk character and found out that he was likely the one behind taking out some of these Nazis to cover his own paper trails, it turns out she's basically Laura Loomer. She gets hit with a nerve agent. So I'm like, well, if life follows Netflix, then Laura Loomer is in the crosshairs of some kind of exit. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim, it's Leo Pirate.
Hey, what's up, Leo Pirate?
So, yeah, really great conversation you had with the last caller. And there were a couple of things that I just wanted to bring up. One thing I thought about was just the name of these worldview building magazines, The Atlantic, Time. Like The Atlantic, it could be a subconscious reference to Atlantis. And Time, we talked about that in the last episode. You know, Time, Chronos, it's just so consistent with their time bending, news bending. They control time. And here is this, such an important world building magazine outlet that went over the Warren Commission, that has some of the most important person of the year, man of the year, right, all the time. Like, it's Time magazine. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second point,
absolutely good. I'm glad you made that connection. I hadn't really thought about that, but we're always talking about Chronos and time and writing our history and therefore taking control over time. And yeah, these propaganda outlets that take a heavy-handed, I think, almost ham-fisted at times, but they take a great deal of control over how things unfold. Time is like definitely appropriate there. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and the Atlantic has just been this prolific, outlet for putting predictive programming, subconscious messaging. You had pointed out before 713, they had an image of Trump. That was right around the time I joined the IPS think tank, by the way, was where they had that image of Trump with curtains over him with his ear clipped. The top of Trump's ear was clipped in that one image. And now, more recently, as we neared JFK's anniversary, they had an image of Trump with a red square on his temple and scrawls of red crayon around his head,
Yes.
kind of like suggesting it.
Like somebody's
like, what?
Somebody's really mad when they made that one. Like it looked like they were emoting, but it looked like a head wound. And remember, he mentioned Laura Loomer. She was there when they made Trump, or they made Julius Caesar look like Trump, and they killed him. Remember that whole play at Central Park? Laura Loomer jumped on the stage and interrupted it. So it's kind of intriguing that she called out that. And she called out one of the Atlantic pieces with the number 40, with the $47 and the bullet hole. So there's two instances. But I think the Julius Caesar thing is also intriguing in its own right, just because, of course, of the megalopolis connection.
Yeah, and the Shakespeare in Central Park with Laura Loomer interrupting it solidified the subconscious association of Trump and Caesar. Like, that is overwhelmingly so. And during Trump's first term, he was seen as this outsider coming in to just really shake up the entire establishment. And with the literal historical Julius Caesar, when he had crossed the Rubicon, he essentially declared himself emperor over Pompey. That was like, previously Rome had a republic. That was the turning point. And then after the assassination of Caesar, you had Augustus Caesar, and then the actual line of emperors began. The role of consulate kind of disappeared. It was like, now we have emperors. So, and the director of Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola, months before the election, he talked about how his film was America as Rome, because it's going to get an emperor, and it's going to happen in a few months. He said that, right? It's going to happen in a few months. He already knew Trump was going to win, like, before it happened.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And before that,
so
that movie, he did say that after. He said that, and he said, was it Make Rome Great Again? That's the faction in the movie. So it's 100% MAGA. Like, we're not reading into this thing at all.
Yeah, now I'm going to really read into it, because when you talk about Megalopolis, Make Rome Great Again, the character had it with Shia LaBeouf, and I believe it was JL who pointed out Shia LaBeouf's birthday is 6/11, which is a code number very much tied to domestic right-wing extremism, right? This is something I want to call in about. This is really important because the metascriptors, they work across different mediums. It's not limited to Netflix shows, Hollywood movies, even magazines. It's also in video games. And this is something I think our think tank needs to focus more on, because video games are huge these days, and there's tons of stuff in them. And I've identified one really big metascriptor in video games is Hideo Kojima. He's the one behind the Metal Gear Solid games. And one of his most, I would say, like, biggest releases, really popular around the time, was a game called Death Stranding that starred Norman Reedus. And it's a game where you deliver packages across a barren, desolate, empty United States with lockdowns, because of this idea that there was this big event alluded to as the Death Stranding. And people, if they're outside and interact with these black goo monsters, it essentially causes a big explosion they call a void out, which is very subconsciously related to the nuke. But you were talking about actor casting. Norman Reedus is most famous for The Walking Dead. And that was a show with tremendous quarantine lockdown programming associated with it. So it's very interesting that this game, Death Stranding, was released right before the C-19 lockdowns and pandemic began. It was November of 2019 it came out. And as we locked down by March of 2020, 3/11/2020, everyone is playing on their game consoles as Norman Reedus, delivering packages across an empty, desolate America. And, that's...
Yeah, that's the same exact theme. And, thinking back on this, you mentioned The Walking Dead, and I believe that those movies were largely there to foment fear of super spreaders and promote lockdown and quarantining and making the decisions to lock people out and not let somebody in if they've been out there, which is a reoccurring theme in zombie movies. And when lockdown started, there were parents saying, if you go on spring break, you're not coming home. But, we're talking about the overlapping between 1968 and 2020. And Night of the Living Dead, which is one of the big zombie films, one of the more iconic ones, came out in 1968. So just another example, though, of this theme. And zombie movies have all originated with the idea of quarantining. That starts with, I think, I Am Legend and The Last Man on Earth. It's always been a part of it.
And Copaesthetic brought up something really important in chat that, like, yeah, video games are constantly using metascripting, but it's targeted towards a younger demographic. And the Call of Duty games have constantly been used in metascripting. In fact, I forgot which Modern Warfare or which version of Call of Duty came out right around the time of 10.7.
It came out on
So
10.6.
while in the news,
10.6.
there was this great attack by Hamas.
Yes, yeah, it came out that night. So that if you think about it, you get the game on 10.6 as it's released, you're playing, you're immersed in this war simulation, and the next day, this fantastical scenario happens where commandos on gliders fly over a barrier, a wall, and kill a bunch of people. And yeah, that to me is priming people to believe what follows. That's predictive coding, I think, like what we were discussing the other day.
And if we take out the supernatural element and see it as mass marketing, concurrent programming is a way of getting target demographics that otherwise wouldn't care about the news to care. I think we talked before that Kesha's song Die Young was top of Billboard leading up to a certain school event, and it had to be pulled from top of Billboard as a result of it. And there's so many examples where media is targeting a specific demographic, then a news event occurs on the world stage, and they have to change it as a result of it. Now, if you're a thinker or mystic, you go, wow, it's because these artists are being, interfacing with God. Or if you're reasonably minded, understanding that propaganda is much more sophisticated in the 21st century, that's really the more reasonable explanation.
Hey, Mazel says that The Walking Dead had space junk, which is kind of interesting. So everything goes into orbital decay and starts falling. That's kind of an interesting theme. But, you talk about the influence of media, and we're not being hyperbolic here because just a couple of years ago, the leftists were all about saving the planet, and electric vehicles were the path to doing this. And now they're destroying the Cybertrucks. They hate the Cybertrucks all of a sudden. Like, they hate Trump, but they're not bombing his buildings. They just burn effigies and kind of emote in different ways. So why destroy these physical trucks of private owners? Why would they have them doing this? They've been told to do this. They're directed by the influencers in media to feel outrage against this thing as a symbol of everything that they hate, and it's okay on their end to lash out against it. And this is just a repeat from back when environmentalists used to slash the tires of SUVs. But I'm just saying that I understand slashing the tires of SUVs and smashing their windows if you think you're saving the planet, but destroying Cybertrucks doesn't quite make any sense to me. They're attacking the industry itself, which they are supposed to be a part of, and it just shows you how incoherent they are, and how as a mob people can just be influenced to compromise their own values if certain memes and ideas are thrust in front of them. They're robots at this point.
And it can't be understated, the time element. Like, I encourage everyone, look at the release dates of these properties and think back. I know it's hard. Try to imagine what the time was like at the time when it was released, because you pointing out the madness and Rodney Crane's character being so similar to Elon Musk, you have to think back to November. Okay, like Doge didn't exist. The Luigi Mangione hadn't happened yet. People didn't, people had their likes or dislikes about Elon Musk, but now he's gone full on like a Nazi parody caricature, which was not the case when the madness came out. And it takes time to make these productions. They don't just come out of nowhere, right? It must have taken at least a year to film and shoot and plan and make the madness, yet it releases right around this time. It's the #1 show on Netflix. And then we start to see news events mirroring it. So that cannot be coincidental, that there is a concerted effort with it. And the last thing I want to say about the, Death Stranding, this is a connection that I just found, and this is the reason why I wanted to call in, because it just is crazy, about actor personas and about actor types, right? So in the game, there is, the whole country is broken apart, it's empty, it's desolate, and there's this organization called Bridges. The main character, Norman Reedus, right, Sam Porter Bridges, he works for them and he's trying to set up the internet across America. There is this terrorist group that's introduced in the game that's led by Mads Mikkelsen. And in the scene where he's shown on like this a Kodak kind of like hologram thing, all in green, it shows this terrorist group. They're called the Homo Demons. That's what they're called. I don't know why they're called that, but they're called the Homo Demons. They're led by Mads Mikkelsen, and it shows them as a nuclear like red explosion occurs about them, but they're all coded in green. They're all like, so this terrorist group is shown all in green as this explosion occurs behind them. And the game has huge subconscious messaging for nukes, big explosions. This terrorist group they set up these nukes and void out explosions to disrupt the rebuilding of America. But Mads Mikkelsen, I looked him up. You know, his birthday is November 22nd.
Oh, that's interesting. Wait.
The anniversary of JFK, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that Mark Ruffalo, okay, I didn't add, when I was talking to the caller, I didn't mention this. Mark Ruffalo, yeah, he plays the Hulk. Well, he's playing a Trump-like character who does this Trump-like dance and enchants his followers, creates a cult. He's also talking about colonizing a white planet, and he gets shot in the cheek. Like he gets grazed by a bullet. So I'm like, I kind of missed that detail when I was talking to him about this, but very, very specific. But you brought up a couple great points here too about Musk. He wasn't full-blown Nazi until after the madness came out. So how do you explain that? And then one more thing, I want to get your take on this. Can you make a prediction? It looks like I think there's another Call of Duty coming out, Black Ops 6 on April the 3rd. So I think we can both agree here that when there's a big new release like that, it's going to contain something relevant to what's going to happen in the news right after, right?
Absolutely. And I'm reading about it right now. Of course, it has a zombie co-op game, but we'll have to look if it has anything to do with nukes in it, because the biggest Modern Warfare game in my youth that came out was Modern Warfare 2 on the Xbox 360. That game features a nuke going off with an EMP blast. So you don't see a mushroom cloud in the game, but it's exploded in space, and the residual radiation of it causes an EMP blast to go through Washington, D.C., and your guns don't have red dot sights, and all the electricity is out. And that was from my childhood. Modern Warfare 2. So Black Ops 6, I'm going to definitely look. If there's anything to do with nukes, lockdowns, it has a zombies multiplayer game, because that's a big mini game. And the Black Ops game is the zombies mini game, where instead you just shoot zombie soldiers. But it has a zombie soldier in it, and we've identified zombies are very much associated with lockdowns and quarantines. So that's already something. I'll certainly look into it. When is it coming out? It's coming out. Actually, Black Ops 6 came out this year. That was the game that we were talking about.
Okay, that is the one. Okay, that is the one.
October 25th.
Okay, I was looking at that.
2024.
Well,
yeah.
What I'm saying is the video games can't be overlooked when it comes to predictive and concurrent programming. It's often in the releasing of the timing of the release, but also this. Like, look at, I think it was Call of Duty 3, World War 3, where it's got the guys in the masks, and you flip it, and the WW3 creates this 311. I mean, we found a lot of 311 pandemic predictive programming in that series. But yeah, it's pretty incredible how they create this echo chamber, and it's immersive.
Yeah, it's truly immersive. And the thing is, sorry, by the way, about the lag. I'm using a Bluetooth headset on my phone, and I'm calling through. So it's like, sorry for there's a bit of a disconnect in that. But with, the skull mask, which is used in Modern Warfare, the terrorist group, Mads Mikkelsen, is represented in Death Stranding. He also wears this skull mask. So does the character Higgs. And the skull is associated with the siege, the people who are really big about like destroying the government, just fight, bomb buildings and stuff. It's very much tied to subconscious fear of these really terrorist groups that can just overthrow. And I was looking at it. I'll tell you, I'll call in another time because I've been taking so much time when I do a deeper dive into Mads Mikkelsen. But the last film he starred in was a Indiana Jones film where he played as a Nazi scientist, a Nazi paperclip-esque astrophysicist, so Nazi scientist. So very interesting. Right?
The Nazi death's head thing, because they also have the whole QAnon movement, and these patriots have made use of the Guy Fawkes mask and the Punisher skull with the American flag. That's one of their signature symbols now. So yeah, all very interesting collection of symbols and stuff. But all right, yeah, definitely great information here. Appreciate you calling. And what we're looking at here is a very sophisticated, multi-layered script that connects all media. And our assumption shouldn't be higher power behind the scenes here, but that this is it's a psyop. It's a military operation against billions.
Yeah, I mean, like, would you call the Screen Actors Guild a paranormal, supernatural entity? It's like, no, they organize how the rights. It's a union, if you will, for actors. So it would be no surprise. It wouldn't be that hard to imagine our metascripters treat these different production studios or companies like paintbrushes, right? Like, it's like, this season of America, we're going to have movies and games and stuff related to this. We're going to have this related to that. It's really not that hard to comprehend, but yeah, for sure. Anyway, thanks so much. And yeah, so bye.
Yeah, appreciate the call. Thanks. Yeah, great information. Again, video games, books, comics, any propaganda vector. And for it to be considered relevant, predictive, or concurrent programming, we're talking about big studios, big productions that reach a certain status. The only reason I watched The Madness is because it was number one. I wouldn't have looked at it otherwise. The only reason I'm referencing movies with details, like this actor represents Trump and he gets shot, movies I haven't seen, is because we are examining these things with a certain model in mind of how media works. And we're making accurate predictions that this movie is going to be relevant for future psyops, future hoaxes. And The Madness happens to be one of the most prescient ones yet. And it foreshadowed this character arc where Musk went from this tech billionaire, space, part of the space papacy, taking us to Mars, to this right-wing shitposter / conduit for extremism, and then getting into politics, influencing the politics, and pushing things into a direction that the left would see as a fascist takeover. Like, this is all in the Netflix movie, and it occurred, and it was released before this stuff actually occurred, before Musk ran around doing the Sig Heil salute, which they explained away and they ignored it. But the fact is, he did do it. And if you look at the way it's been interpreted, they got the Tesla protests, they're associating it with the swastika. So this is like a full-blown operation. Lloyd Miller says, note that Musk does not say Nazi things, quite the opposite, but, well, what does the word even mean? And we have to also point out that Werner von Braun was a Nazi, and he wrote a book about Elon Musk. A very prescient book. He saw the future, apparently. Or this book is just part of the growing canon of predictive and concurrent programming, which is not a new thing. The fact that we have examples of media foreshadowing in the Kennedy assassination reveals something that's very formulaic. That's why I make it a point to say it's the psyop entertainment complex that the conspiracy theories are meant to hide from you. The conspiracy theorists want to focus around the military-industrial complex and the big weapons of mass destruction and the doomsdays, but that's all to distract you from, again, the psyop entertainment complex. Tominoid 3 says, ain't that an actual alt-right thing? Call him a Nazi and he'll LARP as Hitler. Well, if you get into what they actually believe, you do find, look, I use the term belief clusters, because if you look at someone who leans towards the idea that white genocide is real, America's being depopulated, but they're bringing in immigrants, and this is because of Jews, which is what all the Nazis say. Yeah, that's Musk's basic talking points. So, no, actually, if you get into it, it does come down to ethno-fascism. And it does bring up all these, through their meme culture, all these stereotypes and attitudes. Their attitude towards women is also significant. The trad wife thing. So, no, I would say the MAGA ban, which is a thing, the MAGA ban and Nazi values aren't too far off. I mean, didn't the Taliban kind of look up to Hitler too? So there's some overlaps here. So no, you can't say Musk is just a memester, an edge lord, a troll. No, he believes this crap, or at least his character does. And this is another fake thing, another example of a bifurcated psyop. Both sides agree that there's a population crisis. Musk thinks we're running out of people, as do the right wing, and the left thinks there's too many people. They can't both be right. But they both agree there's a problem with the population. The Machine Lie says Musk appears in the movie Transcendence about the radical transhumanist views of Ray Kurzweil with Johnny Depp. Look up Joshua Halderman and Technocracy Incorporated. Okay, I'll have to watch Transcendence. Musk was in a documentary called, I think it was just called Mars. It was a Netflix thing. It was a documentary mixed with a real movie about going to Mars. And this was the one where they juxtaposed the scientists, and it was all female scientists who found life on Mars, with the space cowboys from Texas who went to Mars to drill for oil, cause a Mars quake, and kill off the newly discovered life. So the idea here was, of course, toxic masculinity has been plundering the resources of Mother Earth, capitalism being associated with this idea. That's what it really was framing everything as. But again, Musk is a character, as much as any of them are. The idea that he's rogue or he's fighting for free speech, it's like, give me a break. The biggest mind control operation of all is the space program. Your free speech means nothing if your mind has been put into this box. What's up, Shannon Jones? Thanks for joining. And if you don't want to miss, I would say join the newsletter and get on Mixler. If you didn't know, we now have the morning deep programs. So if you go to infiniteplanesociety.com or you go to the Mixler website and you get the app, I am going to be broadcasting audio streams in the mornings, which will go into the archives. But before I get to the office, I'm generally on Mixler talking. And there's a chat there as well. So a couple of ways to get live stream notifications. Plain Dakota says WWE Writers World Events. Yeah, wrestling has been a major conduit for predictive programming. And recently, Jurassic Liars called in and we were talking about the significance of that Cody Rhodes getting his ear wounded and his eye wounded. With The Rock being involved, Travis Scott being involved, and the date 6/11 on the belt, also a key element in this. But the ear and the eye, 6/11, this is all foreshadowing for Trump. He got the ear, what's next? And we have other examples of this foreshadowing. Even the stuff with Jay Leno, it's intriguing. You know, the ear wound, the eye wound. There's this story that's being told to us in advance in a myriad of ways. Yeah, Musk is completely controlled, Machine Lie says. I would argue that like Musk is real, Trump is real. These people aren't fake, but that they are playing lifetime roles. There may be some freedom within these roles. It's a reality TV show, but it's a reality TV show. I mean, if you think about the fact, and this is not, again, we're not exaggerating. The small percentage of news that they fake leads the news cycles. The fake leads the real in all instances. And the fake is largely driven by actors, not just crisis actors that you see once or twice or three times, depending on how many times they recycle them, but actors that you see every day of your life, whether you want to or not. And even if you're not watching the news, like, let me just not watch the news. Don't want to hear about the Roe v. Wade leak and about toxic masculinity and women's rights. I just want to relax. So I turn on Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and what do I see? Oh, the queen dying in childbirth because they need the male heir. And even though she's the most powerful person in the kingdom, or powerful woman in the kingdom, she's still merely a broodmare for the state. And so they barbarically kill her in the process of getting the baby out. Like, that scenario is what has been projected onto the consciousness of the people who were, pro bodily autonomy, however you want to frame it. But that's one of the first instances where I've noted that concurrent programming is a dead giveaway, that this is not only intentional, but it is provably calculated. And it's calculated according to the release of news cycles. So the entertainment is synchronized with the news. This is a fact. And it has been the case probably forever. And again, it's not every story. People fall for these bad fallacious arguments, the straw man. Oh, you guys say everything's fake. They couldn't fake everything. Yeah, nobody's saying everything. We're saying very specific PR events, very specific stunts, very specific agenda-oriented operations. And these are the dominant stories. But when I saw that synchronization, I said, we can forget trying to convince people about predictive programming. They can always just say we're just cherry picking, but you cannot argue against the synchronization now. And we have so many documented examples of it. And also the political utility of it. That tells you that this is a very mundane thing. This is all about manipulating minds for political purposes and governing minds. Has nothing to do with the higher powers of the universe dropping hints to people who see through the matrix. No, you're seeing through the propaganda. If you're noticing glitches, you're not seeing through the matrix. I mean, this has been an intriguing last few years as our understanding of media has evolved. And look, the public is crazy. We're not. As in, they have been divorced from objective reality and put into a highly subjective worldview. And there is no opt-out. And we're just noticing it. And we're not conspiracy theorists. We're just skeptics. There's a big difference. You see, a conspiracy theorist believes a lot of additional crap to explain the unbelievable. The skeptic is a disbeliever because the stuff is unbelievable. The difference between the skeptic and the conspiracy theorist is the skeptic doesn't believe a bunch of crap to explain lies. Like when somebody lies to you, you don't need to fill in. You don't need to excuse their lies or believe it without evidence. You can just say, I don't believe. They look at you like you're an infidel. Oh, you don't believe? No, I don't. I'm a non-believer. I'm not a believer in strange, unsubstantiated things. And by contrast, the people who trust the mainstream are low information believers. So like, what do you actually know? Nothing. But you believe a lot of headlines. So let's put these two on a scale. What weighs more? Low information belief or highly informed disbelief? And we're on the side of highly informed disbelief. And yeah, it definitely outweighs. Not to mention, we get the moral high ground because the believers are unwitting participants in psychological warfare. And I happen to be a conscientious objector. Dirk says the script is written by Satan. Fascinating. I have a list of movies I have to go revisit. I want to see Asteroid City again because the main character is 100% based on Kubrick. And I think there's some significance to the black cube, Kubrick, Saturn, time-space control over the material realm. And there's some syncretic overlap between Satan and Saturn. I mean, these aren't identical or perfect, but when you look at syncretism, the logic is there. I can point to other relevant examples throughout entertainment, like the Terminator, going back in time to kill the savior, JC, John Connor. The Terminator and John Connor, this dialectic, light and dark. The Terminator could represent Saturn and John Connor, the sun. And the Terminator line that separates day from night is when the sun dies. And he's killed by the Lord of Darkness, Saturn, who rules the night. So there's a lot of Saturn, Satan, time control, the darkness versus the light in all these movies. Darth Vader is Saturn, and Luke Skywalker is the sun. And if you look at their fight, Darth Vader chops his sword hand off, and then Luke falls and he hangs from a cross in Cloud City before his sword hand is reattached. So the sword hand refers to Osiris, the sun god, the sword, the lightsaber, the obelisk. Darth Vader, of course, Dark Father, Saturn. It's all, again, who writes the scripts? Well, we'll talk about time control. And in Megalopolis, it was the design authority, dressed in black with the black-rimmed Saturnian hats, who looked just like the strangers from Dark City about time control, and they write the scripts. They freeze time. So again, Saturn, time. Again, they're Satan, Saturn, tomato. These things, I'm not oversimplifying it. When you look at the role that syncretism plays in the big picture, yeah, there's deliberate overlapping. And it makes sense, again, when you talk about the ruler of the material realm, time, space, the matrix. Lloyd Miller says, skepticism is worthless unless you're also looking for correct theories. Well, yeah, we have. We have a corrected model. We can update your model right now. MSM minus, off-world stage perspective. The worldview that acknowledges that the majority of people have been processed into a de facto religious paradigm. And it's easier to see if you focus on the doomsdays, but when you get into the nuance of it, it's all there. One side believes in traditional religion and angels and salvation from sin through church. The other side believes in aliens and salvation from viral infection and pandemics because of the media-appointed scientists and the injectable Eucharist. So it's this progressive and traditionalist tug of war. And personally, I don't think they're ever going to unite. I think these are polarities that are designed to maintain the perpetual war that George Orwell described. Dirk says, I'm going to also revisit Asteroid City. Okay, a couple things to keep in mind. Asteroid City. Main character is Kubrick. Scarlett Johansson. The name Scarlet has connotations to the Scarlet Woman and the Babylon working in the desert. There's some symbolic connections to Scarlett Johansson in this context, but it's significant that she's in Fly Me to the Moon, about faking the moon landing. And there's a character with a camera who is in the room when she mentions Kubrick 2 times in the film. So there's again, Asteroid City, Fly Me to the Moon, Scarlett Johansson connects these 2 movies and brings Kubrick into them. It's worth looking at. And also, the scene when the alien arrives, what are the people doing? They're sitting outside waiting for the celestial alignment. And in order to observe it, they have to have boxes on their heads with these little holes punched in it, like how you look at eclipses. And so you have a group of people in the desert with cubes on their heads. And I'm like, okay, cubes on the heads, maybe like a camera obscuro, the box. There's some kind of message being told here. And then the alien descends, and its craft is hexagonal, 6-pointed. So the hexagon and the cube, the descending alien, has some interesting subtext to say in the least. And it all correlates, though, because Scarlett Johansson and has a symbolic relation to Marjorie Cameron, the Scarlet Woman in the Babylon working in the desert, and the first eyewitness to a UFO, an alien. It was 1946, a year before the Roswell thing. So again, there's just a lot there. So I have to revisit it so I can do another review of it. I actually walked out on that movie, and it's because the people I was with weren't entertained, and I'm there taking notes, and I missed the end. And apparently Margot Robbie is in it, which is highly significant for her role in Barbie and Babylon, which are connected. If you didn't know, Barbie in the recent Barbie movie does represent the New Age goddess Babylon. It's actually a very occult movie with numerous layers to it. It's not just Barbie feminism. It's alchemical, and it's about the age of what we're in now. It's about this new age, the age of Horus, as they call it, but it's about this energy of this new goddess entering the aeon. So yeah, Barbie dolls are likely satanic idols, FYI. I don't think they put that on the box. And idol magic is a very well documented and understood form of magic. It's an ancient practice, and yeah, I know it's just a kid's toy, but there are other elements to it. I have another example. Do you remember when Chadwick Boseman died in 2020? He was Black Panther, ripped Black Panther, and children across the world were taking their Black Panther dolls and burying them in the backyard and doing these prayers with their arms crossed. Like, that's Osiris stuff. And none of it was coincidental, Because if you look at the timing of the death of Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, you also had at the same time the BLM riots, and then you had a gathering at the MLK Memorial at the mall there. And so you had these hashtags, Rip King. And was it rest in peace Martin Luther King or rest in peace Black Panther, King of Wakanda? So you had an overlap with MLK, Chadwick Boseman, Mr. 42, Jackie Robinson, and the Black Panther, and then BLM, a new iteration of the Black Panthers. So what I'm pointing out here is that even the toys have some role in this propaganda matrix, and the messaging is conveyed even to the youth. I mean, I walked into a CVS and I saw a shelf full of what looked to me like, oh, it's that girl from the UN, the angry girl, Greta. I see boxes with little Gretas in them. And so it turns out Disney Frozen Part 2 is coming out. And one of the headlines I saw said, Disney Frozen 2 is for the Greta generation. And it describes how the main character, Elsa, and that's what I saw in the store, is Elsa dolls. They look just like Greta. How Elsa is like Greta. She stands up to her parents because they ruined the kingdom of Arendelle. And she goes her own way. And so Greta comes out to chastise the older generations. Like, you have stolen my dreams, you ruined my future, you destroyed the earth. So the Elsa character was actually a conduit to introduce the target demographic to Gretaism. And those are just a few examples. I mean, it's everywhere. It's inescapable. The Machine Lie says, religion teaches anthropomorphism and science teaches anthropocentrism. Both fail to put man, nature, and technology in their correct sphere of influence. Yeah, I concur with that. And where I think diverge from science as far as like the scientific paradigm and as people believe it, because I don't have a problem with evolution. What I have a discrepancy with is that I don't think that we are merely evolved apes with big egos trying to impose a sense of order onto a chaotic universe. I think this place is intrinsically meaningful and built for the human experience. And that's not a very scientific thing to say, but I don't really care because, in my opinion, the experience of the regular experience of things like synchronicity, precognition, or even telepathy and other such things kind of make me think that you can't actually come to a conclusive model yet. We don't have enough information. And a lot of this stuff has just been relegated to superstition, to the paranormal, so it's never properly investigated with the rigor of science. You know, people will look at a synchronistic experience and they'll say it was apophenia. You know, I just checked out this movie series. It's called The Swarm. And I think it's based on Beyonce and this obsessive fan. But this obsessive fan cuts her way through life and does a lot of terrible things. But it seems like doors open up for her. She gets a lot of like synchronistic messaging. And at the end of the movie, someone asks her, you know, how did you get to the point where you could do these bad things? And she says, as soon as I found out that God is only an echo. Just an interesting statement, because I kind of think that a lot of experiences that people attribute to an external higher power are actually just literally just echoes from one's own self, but a part of oneself that isn't integrated into the ego, likely because it is transcendent and not filtered through the senses, whereas our experience primarily is. But I also think that our minds are compartmentalized. And I think the media compartmentalization of worldview is likely set up as a blockade to prevent us from decompartmentalizing and making sense of things. But that's if I'm right, that media is just one wing, that mind control is just one aspect of what this place is. All right, let's continue here. So did we run out of time? 1,028 days left. Another prophecy failed to come true. Think about it. These environmentalists, this is how you know it's a hoax. These environmentalists will set themselves on fire, glue themselves onto airplanes. They will interrupt tennis matches to say the world's going to end in 1,000 days if we don't change our ways. 1,000 days elapse. The world doesn't end. And they don't come out and say, hey, aren't you going to thank us? We saved you guys. We obviously put enough pressure on you to recycle a bit more, cut back on your consumer decisions that are bad for Gaia, and look what happened. We saved ourselves. No, they never take credit for saving us. They just reset their doomsday clocks. It's like a snooze button. It never ends. Dirk Zink says, Tim, I found the movie Borderline with Samara Weaving very interesting. It was like a delusion point of insanity. I'll check it out, Borderline. Now, I brought up the London subway attack the other day because the London subway attack, and look, this is long before auto-hoaxing. This is when everything was a false flag. So when the London bombing happened, there was a BBC documentary out about the London subways being bombed. And people noted, the BBC even noted, this was eerily prescient. And then on the day of the bombings, there were drills going on. There were drills going on in the very subways that got bombed in the same locations. And these drills involved the detonation of simulated bombs. So what is that? Yep. So you can say, okay, it's the universe made the documentary align with this future event, but then explain the drill. And then fast forward the American Airlines flight hitting the helicopter, done during a drill in the wake of predictive programming, concurrent movies, flight risk, our own predictions that we were about to see aerial immolations. And our predictions aren't coming from a place of like prophecy. No, we're reading the script. Okay, let's see here. Diana South says AOC encountered the Eat the Babies. Oh yeah, the Eat the Babies protester was a parody, but really good. Satanist arrested at Kansas State Capitol for assaulting a Catholic during a black mass. You know, they're giving Satanists a bad name here because the Satanic Temple is a group that doesn't actually believe in black magic or Satanism. They believe in progressivism and using the imagery of Satanism to antagonize Christian conservatives. So they're not really technically Satanists, but they're running with this. And it's all just provocation. It's just entertainment, a sideshow. You know, you have like the Christians knocking down a Baphomet statue, so now they're victims of oppression. It's, you know, religions are silly. They really are. They're always seeking attention-seeking behaviors. But I did look into it, and yeah, the fight wasn't that impressive. Now, which one here do you think is the Satanist? Yeah, it's the bald guy with the goatee and the head tattoos. And he was setting up a black mass. His name is Michael Stewart, president of the Satanic Grotto. He was trying to do a black mass. So technically he's a victim if he was doing a religious ceremony and he got interrupted. Okay, so it says tensions boiled over. There were Catholic counter-protesters, and they try to grab his literature, and he punched the guy. It says here, Stewart punched another individual who tried to stop him from desecrating a cracker, symbolizing the Eucharist. Okay, so if you don't know what a black mass is, part of the ceremony, it was basically a mockery of the Catholic rite, and they would trample on communion wafers that had been consecrated. So here he is trying to crush some saltines to blaspheme the Lord, and the Catholics intervened. They trampled on his freedom of speech, is what they did. But he erred by punching, and they took him down. Very slow punch. You know, big guy, but the other guy was very quick. He was just able to dodge the blow, and this guy got arrested. But this is what they want. You don't think he's getting this thing framed? You don't think he's happy to have a picture of himself being hauled off by cops for attempting to do a black mass? Like, this is what they live for. Anyway, just sideshow stuff. By the way, we do have a forum, and I'm visiting the forums, and I got a comment from Lynn that I wanted to address because it raises a very crucial point here. And we have this, I don't know, I'm not going to say disagreement. We have differing views about the significance of 9/11, and I do minimize it. I say that there are certain events that they want to take up all the air so that we don't notice all the other events that are happening in their wake. And what Lynn had wrote was, I'm so glad to hear Kubrick did 9/11. Thanks to Tim Osmond for finding that out. Not only could he make epic films, but he also completely staged and directed the plane crash at the Pentagon with no support from the DoD or NORAD. He did it all by himself. That's astounding. Thanks for pointing it out. So I'm being sarcastically accused of turning a blind eye to the Pentagon, the DoD, the U.S. Air Force. In other words, the military-industrial complex. And so the point I'm making here is that the military-industrial complex is there to scare the alternative media types. The thing that you're not supposed to see is the PSYOP entertainment complex. So my point here was this. My contention is that Kubrick did 9/11 because it was a metascripted cinematic event. And that saying that Kubrick did 9/11 is actually closer to the truth than saying that Osama bin Laden did it or that Bush did it. And that's because 9/11 is not a whodunit. It's not about who did it. It's about what is it even? How can you even say this person did it if you can't even define it? And I'm saying that according to the evidence and our understanding of it, it was a movie. That's it. And if that bothers you, then you're a sadist. And you like the idea, or you want to preserve this notion that a bunch of people were incinerated. Like, why would you even defend the atrocity propaganda, which is what it is? It's all atrocity propaganda. That's why I say those of us who are disbelievers, because we don't have enough evidence, but those of us who are disbelievers in this, we don't have any fake blood on our hands. You know, we're not perpetuating mind war. Mike Kim said, in response to my comment here, I said, Apollo 11 is a myth in the state religion of Nasatology. You have to believe in it or you're an infidel. And it's true, the Nasatologists will talk down to you and they'll treat you like you're an infidel if you don't believe in moon landings. They get flustered by this one. Anyway, Mike Kim said, I haven't delved into the later missions. Why weren't they any better? And here's my answer. The limiting factor is the closed labor pool that NASA draws from. They can't just recruit from anywhere. They have to get people with a certain security clearance. So acting ability might not be the reason they even got there in the first place. I mean, look at some of the people they hire. And then also consider that NASA has a monopoly. So there's no free market competition in space. And since there's no competition, nobody's driving for a better product. And that's why I think the Chinese space station looks like they ordered the ISS on Temu. And one other point here, for the Musk fans, SpaceX and NASA operate in the same fictional universe. And all this beef we're seeing between Musk and Senator Kelly from Arizona, it's fake beef. It's Bill Gates beef. These guys aren't really at odds. Because Musk is like, let's bring down the ISS. Senator Kelly's like, no. Musk is private. These guys are, working for us because they're government. And Musk is working for himself because he wants to mine asteroids and become a trillionaire and ruin low Earth orbit the way he ruined cyberspace. And that's another parallel. And that's how you know he's a character. Musk is a very intriguing character, but they have him destroying cyberspace and low Earth orbit. So outer space, cyberspace, these are both commons. And what we're supposed to take from Musk, from like a historic perspective, is this is what happens when capitalism enables individuals to get too rich. The individual can destroy entire systems that adversely impact the collective. And now we're seeing this with space junk, causing airplanes to have to divert their paths, space junk setting fires. We're seeing it also in Musk's mind junk. And there's a correlation here between space junk in low Earth orbit and mind junk in cyberspace. And of course, X is the primary vector for, quote, mind junk, thought crimes, mind viruses. Okay, let's see here. Lloyd Miller says 9/11 was to lionize Islam, now just an ignorant backwater but geopolitical force. Okay, well, you know, what's interesting is that if you look at the political fringes, far left and far right have both exonerated Islam for 9/11. It's like, no, it wasn't Muslim terrorists. It was Bush, Cheney, and these military contractors wanting to get rich, the warmongers. And then the other side's like, no, it was Israel. So if anything, the Muslims in this context are the victims or they're patsies. So it's fascinating how the fringes have their own explanations. Like, we have so many overlapping subjective universes here. But if you're going to call one religion backwater, you have to call all of them backwater, starting with mainstream media. That is the most backwater but potent geopolitical force out of all the religions. And the mainstream media fundamentalists are getting increasingly violent. I mean, if you think about it, even Luigi, who has been smuggled letters apparently from fans, like heart-shaped letters, and who knows what else. But Luigi Mangione, he was inspired by the Unabomber. We were just talking about that. And others are inspired by other mass shooters. So the mass media propaganda is radicalizing people, just like radical religious verses. Like, I think the TV, the mass media, is the de facto state church, and it does have all the elements of religion, and it does have its radicals. I mean, it radicalizes people to scratch Cybertrucks on camera to look like, well, unhinged fringies on X. And that's a big thing. So, like, I wouldn't be shocked if the bomb threats are fake. If the assassination threats, those are probably real. Actually, those are real. Look, I've been vindicated one more time. Months ago, I had said that, because I was doing a deep study into all these right-wing fringe types, people like Nick Fuentes. And I'm like, there's no way Nick Fuentes believes what he says. Candace Owens doesn't believe what she says. These people are paid pose. Parodies of extremism, pose law, which basically states that any sufficiently sophisticated parody will be indistinguishable from the real thing. And these individuals are basically pose. And I said the left doesn't need to pay people to do and say crazy things, that it's intrinsic to their character, because I don't make a moral equivalency left and right. Yeah, they're both equally brainwashed, but one has a distinctly different set of values. And the statist left is qualitatively different. But I'm looking at it, and it's like, yeah, the right-wingers have to be paid to say crazy things, and the lefties, yeah, they do key cars. They do burn trash cans and peacefully, tear down cities when they riot. But a lot of it's organic. A lot of it is real. Okay, and going up through your comments. Let's see. Copaesthetic says, I can argue Lynn's point's better. I get what she's trying to convey. Yeah, here's the thing. When it comes to conspiracy theories, they're always attached to who did it. And the scapegoat narrative is very powerful. So you got a whole group of people who think that this particular nation is responsible for all the world's ills. And they'll never let that go. So you got critical race theory. You got critical Jew theory. Conspiracy theorists who are more centrist will kind of blame basically certain politicians or people in the military-industrial complex. So they're blaming them for these terrible events. But our point is that these terrible events aren't that terrible because they're fake. Yeah, they're still bad in a different way. And so, since it's not the same type of event, if Osama bin Laden is a character in a play, in a propaganda film, then your anger is wasted being directed at Osama bin Laden. And I would think, too, that your anger is misdirected if it's pointed at the Pentagon with relation to 9/11. Because 9/11 is just one psyop in a psy war. And the War has a directorship that performs on both sides of the political aisle. You don't have enough information to say this is a whodunit. We can catch the people that did it. We're still just getting to an understanding of the structure of it. But if nobody died at this event, then who's the real scapegoat? What are you mad about? Should we be pointing fingers and blaming this group for this terrible thing if the thing wasn't that terrible? So when I say Kubrick did 9/11, yeah, I'm kind of making a joke, but I'm being serious that he is one of many directors whose work was featured prominently not only in predictive programming, but in all likelihood, he may have directed the actual event itself, down to the details. You know, like Flight 77, flying for 77 minutes before hitting the 77-foot tall building. Like, there's some elements in there with the numbers and the timing of it that just suggests that, yeah, it's perfectly scripted. It's a movie. Lloyd Miller says, what crazy things does Candace Owens say? You know, okay, she just says standard conspiracy claptrap. She's no crazier than Alex Jones or any of the others. And I would even argue that her disbelief in the moon landing is well-founded. And she's pretty good there, and she's pretty sound in her arguments. She talked to Bart Sibrel. But where they both are definitely, I think, part of a containment operation is they both believe in space travel. They just think this one thing was fake. Neither of them will ever talk about how the space station is fake. Think about this, because Musk is going to get paid $800 million to pull that thing down, to burn it up. And Musk is a hero to the right. There's no way that anybody has any interest in tearing down belief in the ISS. Like the moon landing you can attack with ISS, sacrosanct. Plus, the moon landing happened decades ago, and the people who are part of it aren't really around so much. But the ISS is an ongoing real-time psyop, and it directly implicates Musk, as his own space agency has directly done missions with the space station. So, again, they're all in on the fakery, but people like Bart Sibrel and Candace Owens and any other conspiracy theorists out there with any mainstream coverage, they cannot go that far. They will not. Machine Lie says, look up Candace's husband. Pretty strange. Yeah, it's all really interesting about how she met him on Skype or something. They talked for 17 minutes and got married. I've heard some stuff. I don't know how much of it's real. But he was the CEO of Parler. Now, Parler was an interesting one because you had the Parler website where a lot of J6 stuff was supposedly organized. And to even get on Parler, you had to show your driver's license. And doing my research, I gave them my driver's license. So it was a big honeypot. And then Amazon pulled all its servers, so they just rug pulled it. They destroyed it. But while Parler was being used as sort of an alternative for I guess, or to Twitter, before Musk bought Twitter, Parler was a thing for a minute, bigger than Truth Social. And at the same time, you had the Parler shooter. And I remember at the time thinking, okay, this is interesting. So you have this shooter who's shooting up massage parlors, and so they called him the Parler shooter. And they said he was a racist, misogynist, shooting immigrants. So you had this MAGA-aligned shooter called the Parler shooter as Parler comes out, and they're saying Parler is this hotbed of right-wing extremism. So I thought that's interesting how they're using this psyop, it seems, to demonize the name of this social media network that was starting to pick up. And by the way, many pointed out that the Parler shooter looks like a slightly aged version of Dylan Roof. And it would be on brand. I mean, Dylan Roof, racist shooter, shoots 9 people in a church. I mean, fake, but... Leo Friend says, wow, season 4. Yeah, the season finale of the series The Boys has been brought up here today. But yeah, season 4, episode 4, the Homelander is smiling with blood all over his face. And that's the image that you're seeing in all these stories where they're like, HBO The Boys had to change the title of the season finale because of what happened with Trump. And so you see Trump, blood on his face, Homelander, blood on his face. And it had been a long ongoing conversation that the Homelander is based on Trump, and I watched it. There's a character in there who represents Margie Taylor Greene, and again, the Esposito character, Edgar, the CEO, I think he represents Obama. And there were other examples as well, but we were talking about the Homelander. And these are intriguing connections because again, season 4, episode 8 was the one that was changed, and it came out concurrent with the real event. So they had to alter it, just like in Captain America, Marvel altered the trailer because they had the president getting shot at. And again, these are layered things. This is not just like one detail. This is the president gets shot at while giving a speech, and he ducks down onto the ground. It's Harrison Ford playing the president, which I think might tie in to Ford Theater and Abe Lincoln. His birthday, Harrison Ford's birthday, 7/13, the day of the shooting, and supposedly the birthday of Julius Caesar. And earlier we talked about how Julius Caesar in the park was performed where Trump was Caesar getting killed. So you have that connection. And another one, when Captain America was in the theaters, it was at this Liberty Theater in Washington, the roof collapsed, which, again, a theater collapsed, theater getting shot up. There's some kind of, I think, connection between the release of the trailer and the movie, and it's the theme, the Liberty Theater. But I have to watch it because the Harrison Ford as president becomes the Red Hulk, and I'm pretty sure that's a MAGA connection, like Hulk Hogan. And the red, it's all symbolic, the colors. Lloyd says 9/11 changed geopolitics worldwide. That's what I mean. Okay, so the big psyops are like a reset button. They introduced the atom bomb. And by the way, I have a great video of Joe Rogan auto-hoaxing the atom bomb footage. They're showing one clip where there's a car there, then it's not there. He's just questioning it deeply. I'm like, that's interesting. Because when they introduced the atom bomb to the world stage, what this did is it reframed geopolitics. Now we're in this circular firing squad, mutually assured destruction, duck and cover, and if we don't do everything right, we're all going to die. So now we're in the end times. We were not in the end times until they introduced that. And so I refer to the nuke as a God construct. And if you duck and cover, in my opinion, you're genuflecting. You're bowing to a God construct. And I would say the same for compliance measures regarding another God construct or other God constructs. Gaia is another one. Because the atheists don't believe in heaven, but they believe in space. They don't believe in God who will flood the world for wickedness, but they believe in Gaia who will flood the world for wickedness. They don't believe in angels, they believe in aliens. And you go down the line and just find out that, yeah, actually it turns out that we have a religion for the masses that's bigger than all the other religions, and they're all contained within it. Hey, check this out. RFK Jr. admits that he flew twice on Jeffrey Epstein's jet, and his wife had a relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. I love how all these QAnon heroes are also the bad guys, and they just turn a blind eye to it. Trump hanging out with Epstein, they downplay it, but everybody else, it's immediate. Okay, this celebrity tweeted about pizza, now they eat babies. But these guys like RFK and others, Russell Brand goes to a Diddy party. They're exonerated. Lloyd Miller says, my mother back in the 50s showed me a Reader's Digest article that said the bomb was fake. Okay, now I'm glad. Okay, now I got to find the Joe Rogan clip. Here it is. Now this is what is interesting about it, because the rationale that we're given for, we had to fake the moon landing to trick the Russians to win a propaganda war, which is true. They faked the moon landing to win a propaganda victory, but it wasn't against the Russians. It was against all mankind. But that was the rationale that has been given to conspiracy theorists. But check this out. Joe Rogan here is suggesting that he's here talking about how the grainy footage is all fake and all this stuff. And the reason why they fake the nukes here, to scare the Russians. So you have a parallel narrative. We faked the moon landing to beat the Russians. We faked the nuke to scare the Russians. So here, let me play this clip.
Footage of nuclear test blasts. There's always been a conspiracy theory that those were all basically fabricated at this facility, that those bombs were never detonated.
How did they fake it?
Okay, so here's the question. So what happened to the camera?
You son.
Now, they say the cameras were protected in bunkers with lead shielding, so they have explanations. So I would call a lot of these claims possibly dismissible as truther bait, and it makes truthers or conspiracy theorists look crazy. But here's the part. So if you can accept that they put the camera behind plexiglass so that it's protected from the nuke, okay, well then we should all have the same material. But, they made it out of the same stuff. The shielding is made from the same stuff that they print the passports on. Now, here you have a car that disappears. So you have a continuity error here.
Didn't cause any damage to the film. Where's the see the car?
Oh, it
Okay,
just showed up.
so wait a minute. First
It
of all,
wasn't
where
there.
did the
No
car come
car.
from?
No car.
Second is, does it really look like a
Car.
real, does that look like a real car?
That's insane. You know what it looks like? The smoke is too big. Like the size of it, it looks small. You know what I'm saying? And we're looking at something that's like a few inches tall. The clouds just don't look.
Speaking of this, the scale of the objects relative to the clouds, I think it's kind of funny how Barbieheimer was a meme when Oppenheimer came out concurrent with Barbie, because Barbie dolls, Barbie doll houses, it looks like they blew up a Barbie village if you look at the footage objectively. But I think this is funny. Joe Rogan is here looking at it analytically and questioning it, but it's not enough to say it's fake and get some clicks. Like, if fake, then what? If they fake this, then, well, obviously every government is colluding. And what's the point? It's not for one government to threaten another government. It's to threaten the population into compliance. They didn't fake space to trick the Russians. All the governments are faking space to trick the masses. So they don't go far enough. Their interpretations are always guardrailed. Oh, by the way, autohoax.com is going to be relaunched here before Monday. I'm just waiting for the domain to sync up. It's a much better site. I have a lot of plans to leverage AI to make this site the internet's biggest catalog and database of PSYOP deconstruction. And it's entirely possible now, thanks to a number of AI tools, things that I've been learning. I've been doing a lot of research and development. I do R&D, no R&R. If I'm not here, I'm building something. But I was using ChatGPT's image generation, and they have really figured out how to do font, how to do lettering with specificity. And so I started creating these PSYOP trading cards. And this is just a prototype. But if you look, and this is all done in ChatGPT, and I'll show you the prompt if you want to make some. PSYOP trading cards at the bottom, autohoax.com. This one says drill, and it's a helicopter being hit by a plane. And on the back, I'll have the actual articles that show that the plane hit the helicopter while it was doing a drill for an end of the world scenario where they have to evacuate VIPs. And of course, it happened during a drill. So I'm being factually correct here. But I'm looking to create maybe a full deck of PSYOP trading cards, and I'll probably print them out one at a time. And then once we have an entire set, we'll sell them as sets. But anyway, this was done with ChatGPT, and it just took a few seconds. Major game changer. I have other ones here. Crisis actors, Channel 33 News. You can't tell if they're laughing or crying, or if they're joyfully crying because they're getting some fat crisis actor checks. And then I spell crisis, C-R-Y. So again, these are just something to look forward to. If you don't want to miss the IPS morning deprograms, just stay subscribed and I'll send relevant links. Lloyd Miller says, every government came under control via World War II. Real conflict before then? See, that's a possibility. If you go back to 1968 Newsbenders, they talk about, when did this all start? When did they take control over reality through news? And they suggested it was with the advent of the atom bomb, suggesting that we've gone too far, we're going to destroy ourselves. But I think the atom bomb is also a fake. It's a God construct, which I'm not a denialist, but I think that there's a lot of special effects that go into augmenting our worldview. By the way, the stickers have arrived. If you've ordered stickers, they're on the way. Auto Hoaxer, and it has the penguin with the chainsaw, symbolizing the clear cutting of the forest of fakery. Truthers have walked in circles in the forest of fakery for decades, following loud voices with big platforms who point out the big, obvious fake trees, but they've never been told that every tree in the forest of fakery is fake. And so here we are accused by the Daily Beast of, quote, clear-cutting a forest of information. And I saw that quote, and I'm like, yeah, we are. We're absolutely clear-cutting a forest of information because the information is misinformation. And if it's not, our investigation will reveal this. Let me play this clip. Synchromorpheus sent this to me. He said maybe it's foreshadowing or something. It's Trump mentioning being hot as a pistol. But anyway, it's Trump being a comedian. So let me play this clip here.
Sort of like a hot guy. I was hot as a pistol. I think I was hotter than I am now when I became president, okay? I don't know. I said to somebody, was I hotter before or hotter now? I don't know. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows?
All right, there you go. That's your president. This is what, season 36 of The Apprentice? Oh, interesting point. Copaesthetic says Joe Rogan is the first ever case of moon landing denier auto hoaxer to moon landing auto believer cuck. Yeah, he's gone through some permutations. But another point too. You can have something correct. Like, oh, Trump's assassination attempt was a hoax. But if you don't put that in the right context, then your observation is meaningless. If you are in the sea of irrelevance, facts don't matter. So I describe what we're doing here as a think tank, but penguins, the penguins raft up on the water. We call it the raft because we are buoyant on the sea of irrelevance. And if you are in the box, facts can't make sense. Like you could say, well, Trump faked it, but then if you go with that, then you have to kind of add to it. Well, then who knew? Who participated? And then you start to see, wait a minute here, both sides would necessarily be involved in this. And if you actually go by the available facts and you use logic, you can't help but arrive at the conclusion that the entire thing was a psyop and that Trump was a star player in it. So he's like a crisis actor in chief. All right, yeah, Ted Stryker, send me an email again. Actually, I may not need it. I'm going to go through my orders because, yeah, those stickers have arrived and I will be getting some more. Joe Santos says you should get a card with Gene from Sandy. Yeah, I kind of think that'd be a great idea. Like some of our best, our Golden Hoggy Award winning actors all deserve cards. Collect them all. Crisis actor trading cards. Ted Stryker says that did not sound like Trump. Yeah, which Trump was it? And then who's Alex Jones now? We have to figure that out. Lloyd says, yeah, you got to see the establishment cooperation with the fake Trump assassination. Yeah, another thing to consider too is that if J6 was a big staged psyop, then Trump isn't a legitimate threat to a deep state, so there wouldn't be any real reason to take him out. So the people who believe that he narrowly survived or that God deflected the bullet and let it hit the fireman instead, the people who believe that don't recognize that Trump is a participant. Like it's a very naive take. And one of my points here has been to demystify, to get rid of a lot of, I think, outdated interpretations. Like we have to admit that we are somewhat behind the curtain here. We are observing the mechanisms by which mass mediation processes create an inescapable echo chamber. And we routinely observe the influence it exerts on individuals and on history as they fabricate it before our eyes. And so what we're doing is we are examining the wrong explanations that hold the majority of truthers back. Red herring chasers, death clingers, false flaggers, and activists will not be able to exit the illusion. You have to leave the propaganda behind, or you can't exit the box. It's that simple. I mean, the red pill matrix analogy is kind of ironic because when you're red pilled, you're deeper into the programming. You automatically accept the mainstream, and now you pile on a bunch of stuff. Calm Down says the moon studio lighting is the smoking gun besides the obvious rear screen projection of the moon buggy. Yes, great point. And rear screen projection. That was cutting edge tech back then. And whenever I look at the moon landing footage, I'm like, where the hell is the moon? Like, I see this parking lot they're in, and they're playing around with their little electric moon buggy car. I mean, it looks like a remote controlled car. It looks so phony. But like, where's the moon? Because the horizon is like 50 yards away. The moon is a quarter the size of the Earth, if you believe the official explanation. And if you were to walk on the moon from, you're 6 feet tall, you're looking at the horizon, it's going to go as far as you can see. It's not going to disappear 50 yards away. I have a few quotes, one from Buzz Aldrin, about how he said that the horizon was bendy and it was disorienting. It's like, no, again, it's still massive from the scale, from the perspective of a human being. Make a card for Harley Guy from 9/11. Ooh, good one. You know what card would be a bestseller? Luigi Mangione. Like, if I release Luigi cards, you're going to have competition to get your hands on those things. Like, the people who love the guy. And he is getting love letters. And who knows what else sent to him. Isn't he in the same cell as Diddy and the Prophet of Doom, Frank James, and R. Kelly and Sam Altman? Is it Sam? No, Sam Bankman. Sam Altman's still running free. Okay, let's see. Lloyd says, I theorize that Trump is scripted to resist digital tyranny, but will just seem to moderate it. Yeah, look, if anything, his objective, his purpose is to sell the right on things they wouldn't accept if pitched by the left, but both sides of this thing want it. For example, left is all about sustainability, environmentalism. The right is like, let's just plunder Gaia's resources and make a profit. And yet Musk, richest man in the world, is part of the space program. And the space program can't be separated from the objectives of environmentalism. Space communism is a thing. And it's older than NASA. I mean, the first examples of the thinking of space communism as the ideal goes back to Russian rocket pioneers in like 1905, some book called Red Star, which was really about a communist base on Mars. And Musk may not be a communist. I know Grimes talked about using AI to perfect communism. But even if you use the most advanced technology and you claim you're going as a capitalist, once you get to Mars, you're in a gulag. You're in Siberia. But as far as the end game here, the story seems to be this, and it's not that far away. So we're encroaching here on April. So in June, according to the media foreshadowing, June is supposed to be a big month for Seattle, and August a big month for Trump. And Jurassic Liars has often pointed to very specific dates, which I shy away from. But in his case, he's on to something here. And dates are extremely significant in the subtext of these various psyops, in particular birth dates. In fact, I was going to bring this up on the phone call. It kind of slipped my mind. Mark Ruffalo. He played a character in Mickey 17 who's based on Trump. He gets shot and the bullet grazes his head after he talks about colonizing a white planet. So you have this Trump-esque character played by Mark Ruffalo, who's Trump deranged. And anybody care to guess what his birthday is? November 22nd. So again, this is a pattern. We pick out these patterns routinely. Like I think it was JFK's birthday is also the birthday of John Hinckley Jr., who shot Reagan and who was inspired by Travis Bickle, the inspiration for Joker. And it's fascinating when you mind map this stuff, because you see that no, there's not chaos here. There is a structure. They have written our history in advance, and they have seamlessly merged the fictional universes with the mainstream media closed informational system. Okay, well, this has been great. I want to say thanks to everyone here. And if you haven't checked out Exit Trutherville, the crash course, just go to ips.monster or infiniteplanesociety.com. And the course, and you can't get it anywhere else unless you're a member. In fact, if you have a blue wrench, you can watch the video. It's a 1 hour and 11-minute video. And this video is a overview of what we talk about here, our model of what media is. And included with the video are infographics that explain the MSM box and the subsets of Trutherville and Woketown. And I also included the World Stage Deprogramming Guide and Auto Hoaxology 101. So all of our best ideas in a neat little package right there on Gumroad. Well, the link is on the main website. It's called Exit Trutherville. Not hard to find. And if you want to promote Exit Trutherville, join gumroad.com and you could become an affiliate where you send a link and we get a 50-50 split if somebody purchases the course, which is only $10. Actually, it's optional. You can pay $1. Leo says, Mad Mickelson's birthday is 11/22. Lloyd says, the Mars thing is about making humanity interplanetary and maybe surviving into the future where Earth will be destroyed by something. Absurd collectivism a la Isaac Asimov. Well, originally, when Musk sent the Starman Tesla Roadster into space, he had put in the trunk all of Isaac Asimov's Foundation books in there. And that has been the story. Science fiction has been used to create a fictional universe for Nasatology to exist. And I say Nasatology in all seriousness. Scientology has better actors. Nasatology has better special effects. But these are both space religions. And it is not a coincidence that you have the Babylon working scenario involving future creator of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. And by the way, Stanley Kubrick, moon landing faker, his daughter is a Scientologist. Also interesting, considering that Eyes Wide Shut starred the Jesus of Scientology, Tom Cruise. And then you go from there. Like, wait, Tom Cruise is about to go to space. I mean, it's really intriguing because what we have witnessed here is the emergence of a new religious paradigm. But since they call it science, they've managed to separate it from traditional religions. And I think that this is why I focus on the split between traditional and progressive, because the progressives may mock religion and the concepts of sin, but they have accepted alternatives. AnxG said, what did Rosie O'Donnell call it? Hinky. Yes, she called the shooting hinky, which sounds like Hinckley. The word hinky means fake. John Hinckley Jr., interesting character, influenced by a Robert De Niro character in a Scorsese film about an assassin who's about to shoot this. And the assassin theme also figures into Joker, with the shooting of the character that De Niro played as Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, the inspiration for Hinckley. It just overlaps absurdly. And it gets even deeper when you get into like Brady's shot and he dies on 8/4. And it's 33 years later and they said it was a homicide. So you have all the same signature codes, numbers, and dates. Leo Friend says, science fiction becomes science fact. William Shatner. Yeah, William Shatner, Captain Kirk. I think Captain Kirk is somewhat based on Captain Cook, the explorer of the Antarctic, the edge of the world at the time, the new frontier with space. And William Shatner went to space, and since he went to space, we know that he's a space faker. I mean, you could argue that Shatner's a better astronaut than Buzz Aldrin, because Buzz Aldrin you could argue, is a better actor since he stayed in character for so long. But if being an astronaut is simulating going to space, well, who's been to more places in space and encountered more species of intelligent life than Captain Kirk? But yeah, he went to space. It was a interesting performance. A lot of jump cuts. Like when they go to space, they call it space. They go up to like 50 miles up. They don't even hit the Kármán line. And we see clips, but you only see a second here, a second there, somebody staring out the window, and we call it the overjaw effect. They call it the overview effect. They say when you go to space, you see the Earth, and you see all the pollution, and you see Earth is dying. William Shatner said he felt like he was at a wake, staring down at dead Gaia in her coffin. He says she's dying. So he went down to Earth crying because Bezos has destroyed the Earth. And Bezos is down there with champagne, spraying champagne everywhere. It was an interesting juxtaposition because William Shatner came back down traumatized. And he talked about it for a bit after, about he saw the Earth and it was about to die. And so when you go to space, they say that it resets your view of humanity. You no longer see countries. You just see one world, one humanity, and a planet in dire need of salvation. But we call it the overjaw effect because the way they convey this incredible experience is they have these actors look out the window and they open their mouths really wide and they act like they're super overjoyed about what they're seeing when they're really just staring at a screen in a studio because they're acting. Nero Jack says, very pertinent points. Vivian Kubrick, weird history, and she's close to Alex Jones. Yeah, she is. And her argument's pretty funny. She's like, if my dad faked Apollo 11, it would have looked a lot better. So it's kind of funny because it's kind of a dig at the NASA fakery, but it's also an appeal to, I guess, incredulity, but that's not a great argument. I heard a number of numbskulls saying that it would be easier to go to the moon than fake it. It's like, no, I saw a video where some guy faked a moonwalk in his garage. You know, I've seen people fake ISS effects. The idea that it would be easier to go to the moon, terrible argument. But the Scientology connections are all fascinating because Scientology is not a joke. It's patterned off of the OTO, a Templar thing. It is patterned off of the New Age cult, but it's dressed up with science fiction. So you can laugh at Xenu and all this stuff, but if you consider the role that syncretism, again, plays in all this, it all makes sense. But specifically, Scientology is for world quarantine. It's a lockdown religion. And instead of locking down and quarantining or, quote, disconnecting because of a virus, it's because of mind viruses. So Scientology's premise is that the world is infected with a lot of mind viruses, which they call engrams. And these are negative traumatic experiences that attach themselves to our consciousness and that to our timeline, and that we have to go back in time through therapy, mentally go back and clear your timeline from these engrams, these knots, these mind viruses. And so this clearing process gets rid of them. But if you go back out among people who have not been cleared, you can catch their engrams. So what it does is it causes you to insulate yourself with the cult, the org. And at some point, if you pay enough, you get on their boat, like Noah's Ark. So you have this Noah's Ark thing, the saved, and then you have underground bases like the one in Treminia, New Mexico, where they have plans, a contingency plan. So if the world gets destroyed, they can go into the bunker and then come back and raise everybody Scientologist. But it's about a world quarantine and mental vaccination against engrams. So if you just replace the idea of sin with mind virus, Scientology makes perfect sense. If you replace the idea of sin with virus, then the progressive worldview, as far as their concept of salvation through the injectable, makes perfect sense. These are analogs. Neurojack says the latest Mission Impossible movie, very Crowley related. See, I have to look into that. I'll have to look into it because I was looking at some Crowley connections to 007 worth looking at. And 007, even the code name goes back to John Dee, whose magical systems were appropriated and improved upon by Crowley. Yeah, Gnostic Scientology, says Neurojack. Yeah, a good example of this, check out Vanilla Sky, which in my opinion, Vanilla Sky, in a subtextual way, it does have a connection. I think it's a continuation of Eyes Wide Shut. But that aside, Vanilla Sky is about a 33-year-old. He's the CEO of a magazine called Rise. And this 33-year-old dies, and then 3 days later he rises from the dead, assisted by Sophia. That's her name, and she's played by Penelope Cruz. So the symbolism here, though, ties into the Gnostic myth, this death, resurrection. Sophia is the embodiment of wisdom. Leo Friend says, the New Age concept of Atlantis is a syncretized version of the days of Noah, the antediluvian world. That doesn't surprise me. That sounds right. And I think that the significance too ties into like Avatar 2, The Way of Water, about the Na'vi in the water who are like Atlanteans. And so when that came out, I noted the correlation between the Atlanteans in Avatar and the reportage of floods happening in the world at the time by the WEF. They had a big meeting about it. And then you had the Atlanta Cop City riots, where the environmentalists were protesting against the cops because they were going to clear a forest, and the environmentalists said this would cause Atlanta to flood. And then you tie in the climate change scenario, which is built into the Avatar series, which is, again, Noah's flood through a modern lens. So this flood story is pretty consistently being retold for a reason. It's this reset thing. Wall-E we talked about recently, a Pixar film. It's about the world so covered in trash and climate change that we have to leave into a big space ark. And then Noah's waiting for a sign, the olive branch, to go back, when the dove brings him the olive branch. In Wall-E, they have a little white robot that looks like a dove that finds plant life on Earth and brings it back to the ship to tell them it's safe to go back. Gaia has forgiven you. Or Gaia has destroyed the wicked. And when they go back to Earth, the humans who have been in space for so long and have been served by robots, they don't have to do anything. They're weak. They have no sense of being in touch with the meat-verse because they're all in the metaverse. When they go back, they get rid of the technology and they all agree to become farmers and to work the soil. So Wall-E has the elements of Noah's flood, but also the climate change eschatology combined with a agrarian communist revolution. Lloyd says, I think engrams are real, though, not the way Scientology uses them against members. Yeah, I agree, too. I actually think that there's a lot to Dianetics that is legitimate. The tone scale, I think we do affect each other, and that the idea of quarantining from people who are habitually in negative states is likely a good idea if you're very empathic. And you do have to learn how to set boundaries. In other words, mentally inoculate yourself against other people's toxicity. So there is some value in it, but the religious paradigm of Scientology, I would contend, is simply that. It's meant to be a global religion with an updated set of symbols and theory and themes that will appeal to the modern mind, like space as the new heaven. Lloyd says Rush Limbaugh's favorite movie was Vanilla Sky. Interesting. I wonder if that's revealing about his character in any way. I was obsessed with it. And I watched Vanilla Sky 6 times. I was obsessed with it. I was obsessed with decoding it because at the time I was studying Gnosticism, the OTO. I'd been studying Scientology. So I was like looking into all these things. And here I am watching a movie and I'm like, wait a minute here. This is so layered. And it turns out not only did it have a lot of what was considered eerie coincidental connections to 9/11, even the 9/11 jumper stuff, but it even foreshadowed 2020. So that tells you something else about these movies. So it may relate to some contemporary psyop, but it may still reference something that hasn't happened yet. Sort of like people noticed Trackdown related to Trump in 2016. Like, hey, this 1958 movie is all about Trump building the wall. But this Trackdown episode also has him getting arrested, which didn't happen for 8 more years. Well, Vanilla Sky opens up with a vacant New York, like it's locked down. And the main character, Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz, are faking like they're sick, like they have a cold, and they're laughing about it so they can skip work. So this theme, the vacant city, laughingly joking about faking a sick day, I don't know. I mean, that's pretty solid. And that's just, again, a couple of little minor details. I went through the nuance, even the soundtrack, which is a thing too. The soundtracks often convey a lot of messaging that reinforce the subtexts. Leo says, the Mormon eschatology has the concept of the earth returning to its Eden-like paradisical glory when Christ returns. Yeah, my first mother-in-law was a Mormon, and she told me about in the future the lions will no longer eat meat. She retro-baptized a lot of my relatives, I heard. Which is, I think, what they do. I think the idea is you're saving souls. I think they have the ability to opt out, though. Like, if you're dead and you're in hell and some Mormon reaches down to pull you out, I think you can refuse it. I don't think you're forced into it. I think you still have free will. In my opinion, Mormonism is sort of like a Masonic Catholic hybrid. Okay, let's move on. I think we've covered pretty much everything I want to talk about today. There's always more. The main thing is I'm trying to get all the tech stuff done with. If you want to get on the newsletter, go to ips.monster. Don't miss it. We'll be live again tomorrow. And I'll send out a newsletter link. And look, we're going to get some information or some feedback, hopefully, from Laura Loomer via her friend's friend, based on the first caller. And I'm going to bring up these posts and I'll put it in the next newsletter so you'll see what I'm talking about. How Laura Loomer has a character representing her in the same show that has the Musk character getting killed, and she gets killed. And I tweeted it at her and I said, hey, just so you know, Netflix killed you. At a minimum, she should be getting royalties because they used her likeness and image. And it's kind of notable that when they don't notice these things. Like, if anything, Don Lemon should be flattered. They made him into a class warrior hero in the madness. And again, I called it 2 years before. I said Disease X, the WHO's placeholder name for the big one. I said it's going to be a mind virus and it's going to be hate speech. It's going to be coming from Elon Musk and it's going to be from X. I called it before, and the madness is about Disease X. Radicalized extremists turned into terrorists by the internet, specifically the billionaire who stole the election. Isabel Ann says, in the Truman Show, when the cameras on Truman's set are shown, one is labeled A113. Yes, and Otto revealed the no return directive A113. And when they show the president declaring directive 113, he puts a mask on. Again, 113, 311, these codes are consistent. But Wall-E is just replete with symbolism, numerology, biblical myths that aren't explicit, but it's kind of intriguing here because, Pixar, Disney, these movies are appropriating this stuff and just repackaging it for the modern mind. Anyway, this is Chief Crow Auto Hoax. I'll put relevant links in the upcoming newsletter. Thanks for the comments and calls.
I'm on auto hoax and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes.
My buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996.
96, y'all.
Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a doomed little donkey like Eeyore. I'm gonna be an auto hoax. Auto hoax, and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time.